Pomeroy joined the crowd at the edge of the unusually long single platform, moving nervously from foot to foot and wishing that the train would come. He was completely oblivious to the rain that was blowing in under the canopy and to the fact that someone was standing only inches behind him. All his concentration was focused on the plea for help. It seemed like an eternity before he heard the distant sound of the approaching train. He braced himself to leap at the nearest door when the locomotive finally came to a halt amid a fanfare of hissing and clanking. The man behind him also readied himself. When the moment came, the crowd surged forward, but nobody did so with the urgency of Pomeroy. He literally elbowed people aside. So intent was he on being the first to board the train that he hardly felt the sharp prick on the side of his neck. Once in the compartment, he sat beside a window and stared out. The man who followed him took a seat diagonally opposite and unfolded his newspaper, pretending to read while watching Pomeroy out of the corner of his eye. With the compartment full, the train set off and headed for the branch line to Bury St. Edmunds. It soon picked up speed, but it was nowhere near fast enough for Pomeroy. He goaded it on under his breath, rubbing his neck occasionally as if troubled by insistent stabs of pain. He began to feel unwell, and his condition slowly worsened. The man with the newspaper saw him take out a letter and read it surreptitiously before pushing it back into his pocket. Pomeroy began to sway slightly. When the train stopped at Newmarket, several passengers alighted and headed for the exit. As his eyes filmed over, Pomeroy struggled to read the name of the station. His body felt weak, his brain confused. Relieved when the train steamed out of the station, he rallied slightly, but it was only a brief recovery. He was soon feeling ill once more. He closed his eyes tight and prayed for the strength and determination he needed. Someone relied on him. He had to be well enough to do whatever was needed. Pomeroy simply had to honor his promise. As he tried to repeat it to himself, however, his words became a meaningless jumble, and his control faltered even more. Seated opposite him, an elderly couple became concerned. They asked him if he was all right and if there was anything they could do to help. "Just help me to get off at Bury St. Edmunds," he begged. "That's all." For the rest of the journey they continued to stare at him, but Pomeroy was unaware of their scrutiny. He was too busy trying to summon up what little strength he had left. They eventually reached his station, and he hauled himself upright. When the elderly couple offered to help him, he waved them away. The train stuttered to a halt. Opening the door of the compartment, he clambered out and staggered along the platform, barely able to keep upright. After bumping helplessly into other passengers, he lost his footing altogether and pitched forward, drawing cries of alarm from some women nearby. The first person to bend over him was the man with the newspaper who travelled in the same compartment. Making sure nobody saw what he did, he slipped a hand into Pomeroy's pocket and retrieved the letter he'd noticed earlier. Then he turned the body over with apparent tenderness and felt a wrist for a pulse. He shook his head sadly. "He's dead," he announced. "Call a policeman." Chapter 2. As he walked along the towpath, Nicholas Thorpe was gritting his teeth. He hated being the bearer of bad tidings and knew that he'd get a frosty reception. Thorpe was a handsome, rangy, fair-haired young man with the grace of a natural athlete. Ordinarily, he'd be strolling beside Bernard Pomeroy, his best friend, the cox of the Cambridge crew. Neither of them would have dared to miss the mandatory stint on the river. As their coach never failed to remind them, it built stamina, refined their rowing technique, and generated the camaraderie essential in a crew. Until that point, everything had gone so well. But their luck had now changed.